once again, and welcome to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. My name is Randy Cook. Each week as we sit down here on the show, we're talking about retirement. We're talking about that time when you walk away from work and the paycheck that you're getting is no longer from your employer. It's a paycheck that you developed from your 401k and everything that you've been doing to save. How does that work, and how do you make sure that you got enough and you don't run out of money and all the big concerns that we have? Well, that's what this show is all about. Let's walk through that today. So we're going to talk a little bit today about finances in retirement, and one of the things that I find interesting and frustrating, actually, and confusing, actually, is looking at financial media and looking at the stories that are out there about retirement. So I go to places and find, articles for the show. I went to a place called Business Insider. You may have heard of that. And one guy posted a story. This guy posted a story that said 2025 will see a third year in a row of 20% growth. And I thought, well, that's cool. That's optimistic. That's great. Then I continued to look. The same writer in the same publication on the same day posted another story saying, brace for a correction this year. So I'm like, well, you're covering your bases, dude.
Yeah. I think that guy might write the horoscopes as well. Everything's going to go great today, but something could go wrong, so be careful.
There you are. Right. Exactly right. So first of all, let's just talk about that. Just trying to maneuver your way through some of these stories, and they can absolutely be confusing. I mean, you've talked many times about how they say you need 1.5 million to retire, 1.8 million to retire, and that's not you. That's financial media. But just talking about the stories that we read, what is the point? Where are they coming from telling us this information?
This is the overriding factor with all of these. So I don't know which financial publication this was, whether it was Forbes or Times or whatever. Whether it's written media, whether it's CNBC, whether it's Bloomberg, give these guys a bit of a break, Randy. They've got to fill 18 hours of airtime every day, right?
Yeah.
They've got to fill a 50-page publication every 2 weeks or every month or something. So that should be the first lens that you approach it through, because this isn't unique to this publication. I watch CNBC a lot. We've always got it on the background, the office here, just keeping an eye on things, right? Seeing if there's any breaking news. And they'll have the same thing with one guy come on. It's going to be a great year. The next guy is, it's terrible. There's going to be a huge recession. Take it with the grain of salt that this is financial entertainment to a degree, right? They've got to keep eyeballs on. So, because the truth is, if you read everything that comes out, you watch everything that comes out on the TV, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're going to pull your hair out because you're going to have no clue where it's going, right? That's how people should be looking at it.
Well, you think about just the names of the programs: the Market Countdown, the Halftime Report, the Closing Bell, and that just implies that we are in the here and the now and the present and up to the second of what we're doing, and we're reporting these things. When I'm looking at retirement and you're looking at retirement, we're not looking at up to the second. We're looking at 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, all a long stretch of time. We should probably have a little different mindset about our money, shouldn't we?
Yeah, the plan should absolutely be a long-term plan, not a day trading plan, right? Yeah. Which is kind of what's being described there. You'll meet people that tell you that they've made lots of money day trading. I can just tell you the numbers do not support that information that you get. Like, most people lose money day trading. The significant majority lose money day trading. And do you want to day trade with your lifetime of savings? Probably not. Probably not, right? So you're absolutely right. It should be a long-term plan. And what really should be the attitude, because I can tell you, this is the way we look at it. We don't care what happens in the market from one day to the next. If you react to everything that happens, and that doesn't mean that you don't pay attention to it. It doesn't mean you're not aware of what's happening in the economic environment. But political stories, news stories, all sorts of things can sway the market temporarily. And if you jump every single time you see something like that, you don't have a plan. You're reactive. You're not proactive.
When I think of some of the conversations you and I have had before about, the risk of your money, and there are people that we can look at, like, these people on TV or hedge fund managers and all these different day trading kind of things. But there's another side of this coin, too. And you take a look at people in the big universities, and they have, pension fund managers. They're investing for their college so that they can pay their professors for 50 and 80 and 100 years. Mm-hmm. And that's how they look at their money. And they're very happy with 3 and 4 and 5% because they're looking at a long-term basis. Maybe we should think more along those lines and look how they are managing money rather than these people who are day to day.
Yeah, the endowment funds, the pension funds, right?
Yeah.
They look past their own life expectancy, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And say, how are we going to invest for this long term? If you're requiring a 15% or a 20% return to make your retirement work, you're not ready to retire. You're just not. We've talked on prior shows. Occasionally we'll have people that they're do-it-yourselfers. They don't really want to work with us, but they're not quite sure if what they're doing is right either. And they'll want to talk to us about it. And typically we don't meet with those people, but every now and then, somebody will refer their neighbor, their brother, whatever it is. And we'll be, all right, as a favor to you, we'll meet with them. And we had a guy, it was a while ago. He was getting ready to retire and he had his Excel spreadsheet all out, planning it out. And having done financial planning for just as long as I have, you can kind of start to look at the material you have to work with. How much do we have saved? How young are we when we retire? How long does the money have to last? What's our social security going to be? Stuff like that. And you start to get a bit of an idea whether the plan is realistic, whether that person, whether they're going to be able to make it work or not. And I was reviewing this guy's spreadsheet for him, and I was looking at it, and I was like, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something not right about these numbers. They don't make sense. And finally I said, are you building any inflation into this? No, there's no inflation at all built into it, right? So First kind of problem right there, right? Mm-hmm. Much bigger problem is I said, well, how about rate of return on your investments? What are you expecting to get? He said, 15%. And I said, okay. I said, well, kind of where'd you get that from? Like, well, it's just kind of what the market's been doing recently for me. I said to him, I was like, look, throw a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or even on there, right? Yeah. And you'll see how unrealistic it is what you're looking at, right? Because you're just not going to get a constant, forever 15% return on your money.
Yep. You're listening to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. If you want to sit down and talk about your retirement and really sit down and say, what kind of a return do I need? Can I do 3, 4, 5%, or do I need 8, 10%? I'd love 15%, but how realistic is that? Sit down and talk through that, and let's figure out what your retirement plan is. Here's our number. It's 210-985-6200 to sit down and talk with Jay. That's a free meeting. We'll go through our Get Me to Retirement 5-step process. If you want to know what that is, go to our website, retire210.com. It kind of breaks everything down. Really, it's just a meeting at the beginning to say, what do you want to do for retirement? Are you a person who wants to sit in first class when you go on a trip, or a person who sits in coach? Is a cruise to you someplace in the Caribbean, or is it around the world or Mediterranean? Everybody's got a different idea, and it's going to take a different kind of a plan. Let's sit down and work it through together. Retire210.com or 210-985-6200. Well, when you get to be my age, and you sit down, every now and then people start bringing up your age, and I want to have a little fun here. This is comedian Brad Upton talking about how he's starting to feel his age.
I don't know about you people. Life for me now is just a series of events reminding me I'm getting older. Anybody else? Yeah. That's all my life is now. I was at the mall the other day in the food court. Several very attractive women walked past me. I realized I was staring at their food.
I love it. All right, sometimes food looks pretty good, but it's not. And sometimes a girl looks good and she's not. But anyway, all right. So I want to talk about, and it kind of relates back to what you were saying, and that is this. Is sometimes people will come in with something that looks really good, and they got that hot stock tip, or they got, I'm going to put my money here. This is a no-lose situation. And you look at it and you go, maybe not. Kind of like the guy with the 15% return. Right. Have you had people like that come in and say, this is the end all to beat all, and you're thinking maybe not so much?
It's more so we see that in people not really understanding the risk that they're exposed to. Okay. So 2022, we did have a down market that year, and that was a bit of a reality check for a lot of people. But prior to that, like the prior 10 years to that, I believe if I'm remembering it correctly, we had one down year, and that one down year was down 1 or 2% or something like that. And I believe that lulled people into a bit of a false sense of security with the risk that they're actually taking. The best example was this week. We had a lady come in who's getting ready to retire. Lovely lady. It's just her. She's single and about $1 million. And with Social Security and everything she's trying to do, her plan will work. And right now she's invested in individual stocks. And I said, okay. I said, well, how are you picking the stocks, the individual stocks? And she's like, well, just stuffing I've read or my neighbor or whatever it is. And fortunately, it hasn't been speculative stuff. It's been fairly stable, kind of value stocks, dividends, things like that. So that's great that she's been in that. And I said, well, do you want to keep this the same way when you retire? Everything in the stock market, nothing outside of that, not even anything outside of stocks, not even any bonds or anything. And she said, well, yeah, it's been relatively stable. I get some dividends out of it. And I don't ever really see it go down. And I said, do you remember 2008? Because you would have been, whatever she was, like late 40s or something like that at the time. She's like, oh, yeah. She said, I remember that. And I said, well, you might be in the more conservative side of the stock market, if you want to put it that way, right? But you'd probably still be down 25, 30% if we had another 2008, because the market was down 57, right? So, well, just say half of it, right? And when I put it in perspective like that, she was just like, oh, wow. Like I hadn't thought about it that way because it wasn't front of mind, right? Yep. And we've had a good markets for a long time. And so, I think it's kind of a human thing too, to just try and forget the bad stuff anyway, right? Yeah. Kind of put that to the side and think about what's happened recently. And I said to her, I was like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. All I'm saying is it's very important that you really do understand the risks that you're exposing yourself to. It was actually a really great conversation to have with her because had we not, she would have just plowed ahead with what she was planning.
We do have some recency bias on us many times when things are going well, but don't have financial amnesia and forget about that the market can get cut in half. It did in 2008. You go back a little bit, remember the tech wreck when NASDAQ went down like 75%?
Early 2000s.
All of this money that's in tech right now and holding the money, what if that were to happen again? And to think that your 20 or 25 or 30-year retirement, we're not going to see that kind of stuff, it might not be a very good way to go about it. Let's sit down and build a plan. And it says, if the market is up, we do this. If the market is down, we've got that, an all-weather portfolio, so to speak. Give us a call and let's sit down and talk through it. Here's our number. Here's our website, 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200 or our website, retire210.com. And when you scroll down to the bottom of the page there's a form fill that you can put in a name and information there, and our team will give you a call, and then we'll just have a conversation. What is it that you're interested in talking about? What is your concern? Is it markets? Is it taxes? Is it estate planning? What is it? And then let's talk through that. And maybe you come into the office and we sit down and we build a personal plan for you. Again, retire210.com or 210-985-6200. Well, many times when we start talking about retirement, we go in talking about our investments. That leads to a conversation about taxes. That leads to a conversation about estate planning. It just one after another kind of goes down the line. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I found a young lady. She's a young mom. Her name is Kylie Bowler. She lives in Arizona, and she's very close to her grandfather, and she ended up being his caretaker. And after he passed, she was very surprised to find out that her grandfather left her the entire estate.
Wow.
Well, there were a bunch of other family members that were kind of surprised by that. And here was her reaction. She's kind of doesn't know how to deal with this.
Context, I am the youngest surviving family member for my grandpa. My mom, my aunt, his sister, his niece, and my two older brothers All are older than me, but he made me the sole beneficiary for everything. Although obviously this was a really big thing to help me for the future, my entire family kind of resents me. And even my mom, who I had a pretty close relationship with at one point, she's not a fan of this and she doesn't understand why these changes happen.
All right. So she's in a tough position. She took care of Grandpa. That's what he did. So how do we avoid this? I mean, if you are in that situation, you want to put together some estate planning, you don't want to cause family strife when you're gone. So you want to put this all down in writing. And how much do they need to know? How do you deal with those questions, Jay?
Yeah. She sounds like she's 20 or 30 years old, right? I don't know how old she is. She sounds like she's... So I'm guessing her grandfather was in his 80s, something like that. Mm-hmm. So talking about money and wills and estates, that generation just did not do that, right? You just don't. You probably could think your parents like just nobody discuss money. No.
There's an envelope in the desk and it says, if I die, then go read it, right? Yeah.
And then surprise.
Yeah.
So to start off with, you need to go and discuss this with an estate planning attorney. That's why, you mentioned, you retire, you start to think about taxes, you start to think about estate planning, you start to think about these things. That's why we packaged this together years ago, because we saw the same things with our clients. Mm-hmm. Somebody retire, and kind of when you're retiring, you can't keep kidding yourself that you're a spring chicken, right? Like you're retiring. So you're not that young anymore, right? So what do you start to think of? Hey, estate planning. I want to make sure this is all taken care of. So I'd always suggest, find a good estate planning attorney. You can talk this through. But I'll tell you what we see, what we suggest to clients, and we see more and more people doing. Have a very open discussion about what's going to happen, right? I can understand why you don't want to, because probably this guy knew there was going to be a problem, right? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out this is going to cause some issues with the family, right? But look at the situation he's put her in, right? Yeah, and I think if you can articulate why you are doing something, maybe someone doesn't like it, but they can at least understand why you've done what you've done, right? I know not all families are like this, but most of the people that we deal with, if we're going through the estate planning process with them and they want to talk to their children about it, they'll say, hey, can we have a meeting with you in the office with our kids and just walk through this whole thing? And it's been a very rare event that you've had one child who maybe doesn't feel they're getting what they want, once the parents talk through it, is still upset. Yeah. They're just like, okay, I understand where you come from. We had a situation like, this is a couple months ago, but it was a couple and they've done their estate planning, and 75, maybe 80% of the estate is going to one of the children. And the other one is getting, maybe they get the house or something, and then the other one gets it. Anyway, it's basically an 80-20 split. And we had the meeting, and they told me ahead of time, they said, hey, the reason we're doing this is our daughter is a single mom. She's got a couple of kids. It's different. She doesn't really have a stable job, and she hasn't historically had one. Our son is very well established as an executive with a company. His wife's a doctor. They do very well for themselves. They're going to be fine. And in the meeting, that's basically what they said to the kids. And you know what? There was nobody was upset. Like, he wants to see his sister taken care of. And I guess he might look at it as well as, hey, if she's taken care of, I don't have to worry about taking care of her either, right? But it was the explanation of why it was happening that can save any confusion later.
Yeah, I think I've heard that you don't have to actually say numbers. This is what you're going to get. Sure. But you can say, this is how we're going to dole this out and the reasoning behind it. Right. It takes some communication for sure. Well, we would love to have the conversation about your retirement with you, and these issues come up. You've probably got questions about them. Let's get it nailed down. Let's get some answers for you. We call it our Get Me to Retirement 5-step process, and you can read about it on our website, retire210.com. That's retire210.com. And if you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to hear more, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. And again, thanks for listening to the Clear Skies Retirement Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Investment advisory services offered through investment advisory representatives at Secure Financial Management, a registered investment advisor. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed are not designed nor intended to be applicable to any person's individual circumstances. It should not be considered as investment advice, nor does it constitute a recommendation that anyone engage in or refrain from a particular course of action. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Secure Financial Management is licensed in your state, please contact their office. Secure Financial Management is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Wholesalers Insurance. Jamin J. Kirkwood, Texas Insurance License number 1421850.